There's a general feeling amongst the chiefs that they need to prepare for war in, even as soon as 27. And yet we're not seeing this commitment to increase defence spending.
Defence chiefs calling on the government to put their money where their mouths are and fill the £28 billion black hole in the MOD budget that's been identified by the Chief of the Defence Staff. The government is signalling they want to raise defence spending. There have been reports the Prime Minister was looking at accelerating spending on defence, so the 3% of national earnings target for defence spending could be reached, by the end of this Parliament and not until the next. So that, however, has been described by Downing Street as a misreading of the situation. What is going on here, then? The person to ask about that is our next guest, Larisa Brown, the defence editor at The Times. Hello to you, Larisa.
Hi, John.
Hi, always welcome, Larisa. Always keen to get your insights on these stories. So it is now pretty widely reported, isn't it, that the defence chiefs of our country, they want to accelerate defence spending. And we hear the Prime Minister say, yes, we will spend more and spend it faster, but not at all clear what that means.
Yes, it was kind of reported as an indication that Starmer was going to suddenly announce more money for the defence budget in the next few years sooner than planned. But the briefing that was coming out of the government, including to me today, was more that he was speaking generally that, Europe as a whole should be spending more money faster. And the sense that I got was that doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to suddenly give billions more pounds to defence tomorrow. However, there have been talks between government departments about moving that target of hitting 3% by next Parliament to this Parliament.
Yes.
And I think that's quite obviously very welcome in the Ministry of Defence, which is suffering from a huge black hole at the moment.
Right. I mean, is there a certain amount of tension here in Whitehall? Because it seems like it. And the MOD and the military commanders are putting the pressure on in a big way, aren't they? I was reading, Larisa, about the head of the RAF, Air Chief Marshal Sahar Smythe, at the weekend, openly at the Royal Aeronautical Society, is saying that the progress on agreeing more money was being stuck at political level. That's quite outspoken for a serving commander.
He was. He said, I was at his speech, and he was saying that it's clear that people generally are frustrated by delays to the defence investment programme, which we've not yet seen, despite the fact it was supposed to be published last autumn. And he was saying that the military chiefs have provided options to ministers for what they can do with the money, and that the dip, as it's called, now rests with the politicians. So that's quite interesting in itself. We've been reporting that over the next 4 years there is a £28 billion black hole in the Ministry of Defence, and this at the moment seems like you'd have to make serious cuts in each of the services. So if the government is seriously considering this increase to defence spending sooner, then I think that will obviously be very well received by people like the Chief of the Air Staff, who must be concerned about what they're doing going forward. And
when we hear talk of defence chiefs worried about a £28 billion black hole in the defence budget, do they mean a shortage of what's needed just to fulfil existing commitments, or for what they think needs to be spent to expand commitments?
It's the commitments that were outlined in the Strategic Defence Review, which was published last June, and Keir Starmer was under the impression that the plans were fully costed, which did surprise some people that I speak to, and it turns out that actually no, they're not. The ambition set out for the coming years, they're well short of the money needed. So there is a serious issue there, and the Chief of the Air Staff also made the point that he thinks that by 2030 you're going to have this situation where Russia becomes a proper threat to Europe. Potentially you have a ceasefire deal, which may or may not come, but if there is some sort of peace plan, that will give Russia time to regenerate its forces and prepare for another battle. Yeah. And there's a general feeling amongst the chiefs that they need to prepare for war in even as soon as 27. And yet we're not seeing this commitment to increase defence spending significantly over the next few years. So you need to quickly speed that up.
Right, so we're well short of what's needed just to do what we've already promised will be done in building our defences, let alone the extra that so many are arguing we need to do now to be battle ready for a possible war with Russia that could come sooner rather than later. And what are you picking up about the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, digging her heels in, Larissa?
I'm struggling on this one because John Healey isn't really like other defense secretaries in the sense that we had people like Ben Wallace and Gavin Williamson who were happy to speak quite openly about their sort of disagreements with the Treasury and bids to get more money. Healey likes to work more with Reeves. He's much more collegiate, and the briefings that I'm getting is that they're on the same page, and that it's not that Reeves is saying, no more money. They are discussing what they could possibly do, and if there are any innovative solutions, which nobody's explained to me what they possibly could be. But I did speak to one senior government source today who said that they think we should be hitting 3% right now, which I found quite extraordinary.
Yeah, well, it's really good to hear from you, Larissa. Thank you. Larisa Brown is our defence editor at The Times. We can get the thoughts now from across the Atlantic and talk to Fred Fleitz, who's the former chief of the National Security Council in President Trump's first term. Fred, hello, welcome back to the show.
Hey, John, good to be here.
It's good to have you here. Now, of course, we know a lot about the fact that this country is under pressure from Washington to up its game when it comes to defence. And it is fair to say that President Trump can claim a certain amount of credit for that, not just in this country, but across NATO in Europe.
I think that's right. And it's good to see that most European nations recognize that after what we've seen in Ukraine, this unprovoked, brutal war of aggression started by Putin, that it really is necessary for European nations to spend more on defense, to be prepared to defend their nation. And look, the Trump administration has tried to put forward a hard reality, and that is that the U.S. has defense needs in other regions of the world. It can't concentrate just in Europe. It's not pulling out of Europe, but it needs Europe to do more.
And we heard a lot, didn't we, at the Munich Security Conference of the weekend, European leaders saying, look, they see the need to be more autonomous, to be more self-sufficient when it comes to European defence. And that's in the light of concern about America just reducing its commitment to the alliance. So give me your view. How far do you think this American administration under President Trump does envisage significantly disengaging from the defence of mainland Europe, and in what way?
I think this is the latest issue of the day where we're arguing about that's going to go away. I don't think Europe is going to be defending itself by itself, nor is the U.S. going to pull out. I think these issues of the moment are going to fade. We have a strong bilateral relationship and partnership with the UK and with NATO. It's not going to end. And I think Marco Rubio made it clear it's not going to end.
Okay, so the relationship isn't going to, there'll be no sudden divorce, as it were. But it is fair to surmise, isn't it, Fred, that there's a lot of thinking in Washington now about a different kind of partnership, a scaled down partnership with maybe smaller ground forces, American ground forces on the ground, although America does see a continuing need for American bases to project its global power. The presence that we see now, that's gonna diminish, isn't it?
Now, Rubio did not say that at Munich. He has said, and this was in testimony to the Senate Foreign Relations Committee a week earlier, that NATO has to be reimagined to deal with new threats. And the U.S. is seeking flexibility to move some forces to other areas of the world, especially to the Asia Pacific, because we have to deal with other security threats. But it doesn't mean that the U.S. is pulling out of Europe.
Okay, now tell me, we've got midterm elections coming up in the United States, which are going to be, potentially very, very significant. What difference could the midterms make, Fred, if there is a change in the balance of power in the House of Representatives, the lower house on Capitol Hill? What difference would that make to this conversation and everyone's calculations?
Well, in the U.S., there's real concern that if the Democrats win back the House of Representatives, we're going to see a constant stream of impeachments and investigations that's going to make it more difficult for the Trump administration to operate. And we saw that during the first term. So the administration is working very hard to keep control of the House. And if in the unlikely scenario that the Senate was to go, it would be even more difficult for the administration to operate.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, John, one reason why 2025 was so active in foreign policy, because President Trump realized that this was his year to get things done. 2026 would be a year to keep control of the House. And if he does keep control of the House and Senate, I think we'll have very active foreign policy initiatives in 2027.
Right. I mean, clearly, if the Democrats take control of the House, let alone the Senate, it would have the effect of maybe accelerating President Trump's advance into lame duck status. But what difference would it make to the alliance, to the Atlantic Alliance?
I don't think it's going to make a big difference because the Trump administration isn't going anywhere. It's going to keep its commitment to Europe. In democracies, each party has an opportunity to win elections and win control of legislative bodies. They're going to do their part, but Trump still controls the presidency. Trump still controls foreign policy, and his approach to Europe is not going to change.
And last question then. There's a lot of talk, isn't there, about the interpretation of Article 5, the NATO treaty commitment to collective defense. What is the interpretation of Article 5 as you read it then? On the face of it, on paper, it says an attack on one is an attack on all. And that assumption that goes for both sides of the Atlantic has been called into question in so many ways at so many different times. What is your reading?
Americans are very grateful to the UK and to Germany and to so many other nations for coming to our aid after the 9/11 attacks when Article 5 was triggered for the first time after the United States was attacked, when your country sent troops into Afghanistan, as did our allies in Germany, and suffered many, many losses, many casualties, many, many injured. We stand by that Article 5 commitment. It works both ways. I don't know what you've heard to the contrary. Maybe there's been some confusion, but Americans support that approach. We appreciate our support for our allies, and we stand with them.
Okay, it's good to talk to you, Fred. I would say at different points, I've heard President Trump talk about, if countries don't live up to their commitments, they can't count on America to come to their aid necessarily. That sort of rhetoric is maybe what has caused some concern in some quarters, but it was good to talk to you. Thank you, Fred Fleitz, former chief of the National Security Council in President Trump's first term. Now, Will Hutton joins us, the author, political economist, the president of the Academy of Social Sciences. Hello to you, Will, and welcome.
Good to be here.
Fred Fleitz there was sounding very reassuring, but the concerns about the Atlantic Alliance are very real, aren't they?
Oh, yeah. I mean, he was reassuring, but he also made the point, which I think is now across the aisle in the United States, that actually there will be a pivot to Asia, and the Chinese threat as they perceive it, which it is actually. I mean, the Chinese Navy is very close to being the same size as the American Navy now. So it's clear that actually you don't have to be Donald Trump. You could be a kind of liberal, moderate Democrat, and you want to kind of move resource into that theater. So that's a reality. I also think the electorate in the States is it's nice to hear a former chief of the Security Council in the States kind of talking in the terms that Redlitz did, but it's not where the kind of beating heart of the Republican Party are. I mean, and I think that and that speaks to a big constituency in America. So I can't. There's that truth. There's the truth that actually resources are constrained. There's the truth that the Chinese resources are getting kind of more committed. There's also the truth that Russia's aggression isn't going to go away anytime soon. So the need for kind of increased European defence expenditure, both because it's going to be there's a risk, and I would put it no more than that it could be required in reality. Both as a deterrent and because it might be needed to be used. It's just an imperative. Britain has to raise its defence expenditure from 2.3% of GDP. It's an obvious necessity.
Right.
It's clear that it has to happen sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
And it's true that the French and the Germans need to do exactly the same, which in fairness, they are.
Right. Now, you wrote, didn't you, Will, this time last year, about the need to accelerate defence spending to 3% of GDP national earnings by 2029, so in this Parliament. Now, a year later and a budget later, there's been no such commitment. Do you still have hope of that happening?
It has to happen. I mean, and Keir Starmer can't, carry on kind of saying it's going to happen at some time in the future and wringing his hands. And there are innovative ways to do it. And let me put one on the table. This black hole of 28 billion over, actually it's a decade, So you could go year by year to close that black hole, increasing defense expenditure by 3 billion a year, which is around 0.1% of GDP. So if you did what he's committed to, which is moving money from kind of aid to defense next year, that gets you to 2.7, and then you need to kind of get it up to 3 by 2030. And my suggestion is that you do the following thing: you issue a war bond. And I think it should be a £10 billion war bond, and it should attract a very low interest rate of 2%. And I think you can make it very attractive to a lot of people in the UK to buy this war bond if you were to say that you can hand the war bond on to your descendants free of inheritance tax. So you could say to people, buy the war bond, you only get 2% interest on it, but actually you can pass it on to your descendants and they will get them. And they can obviously sell it in the markets at some point, because you can buy and sell war bonds once the money's been raised. But you'll be able to, that you would not have an inheritance tax kind of liability on your death. And I think you'd sell that bond in about kind of 3 hours flat. And you'd get the money in, and you could be at your target of 3%. The bond markets wouldn't be worried, and off you go. I mean, if you want to do it's that kind of innovative thinking that Keynes used during the Second World War to finance our war effort. I mean, Beaverbrook managed to kind of, we started, May 1940, we had fewer airplanes than we had when we launched the war in September 1939. Yeah. But by October 1940, we'd almost doubled the British Air Force and won the Battle of Britain. And that was done because there were innovative ways of financing increasing aircraft production. If we want to do it, we can do it, and we should do it. We should take a leaf out of our own history and do it now.
Right. I mean, look, there's one novel idea for helping with the defence budget. But the 28 billion black hole, it's just about trying to keep pace with existing commitments, let alone expanding in the way that so many people argue needs to be done. And the Chancellor is reportedly digging her heels in. No more borrowing, no more taxes, and so on. Seems to be the familiar line of thinking in the mind of Rachel Reeves. You're talking, aren't you, about a new sense of mission, a national sense of mission to take in the public as a whole. I mean, that is needed, isn't it? And if it is, how's it to be generated?
I mean, I also think, by the way, I mean, I hope we have enough time to discuss it. I strongly believe there should be collaboration with the other two great powers in Europe, France and Germany here. I mean, we have to kind of think about a collective effort between the three major powers, and that there is that willingness to do that. I mean, Merz and Macron want to make that happen. But come back to your point. Yes, this black hole, by the way, my understanding is that this black hole is 28 billion or 28.5 billion, is to meet is the gap between the resources now available and the ones we need to have available to meet the 10-year defense strategy. So it's a kind of 10-year cumulative black hole to 2035. Now you're right. The open question is whether that strategy is sufficient and whether it's kind of fronted loaded enough given the nature of the Russian threat. And I would say you have to do more than that. But we shouldn't get too overwhelmed by kind of numbers that seem kind of enormously large. They are manageable. I mean, I've suggested one way of financing it, and the government's already got another way of kind of moving money from the aid budget to the defence budget. I think that's a mistake, by the way. I think that you need soft power as well as hard power in today's world. But you can get along. I also think, by the way, that that people would accept an increase in taxation for this. I mean, so some combination of what I've described, an innovative war bond, which would, I think, be very attractive to people to buy, and actually an increase in taxation, and you can get the money very quickly. And actually, John Healey and the Prime Minister should, make it very clear together with the Chancellor. That's the plan. And actually, I think you'd get the defence establishment would swing behind it very quickly. And I think you could get the French and the Germans to talk in these terms. We need to join, the acronym is dreadful, SAFE, this joint European initiative to kind of make Europe safe. The trouble with that is that a lot of the money has already been earmarked for German and defense
Okay.
and French and Italian kind of manufacturing weapons. But come on, we should join it, because the next round, our defense contractors can pitch in there as well, and we need.
Yeah.
The kind of kit that we want the French, German, and British armed services to have needs to be interoperable.
Okay, Will, I'm going to have to. This is a fascinating conversation. I'd love to get more deeply into it. More taxation, more borrowing, or more cuts in public spending, and trying to get that through the Parliamentary Labour Party at the moment would be a challenge as well. Let's talk again on a future occasion. Will Hutton, thank you for joining me.
Thank you very much, John. Thank you. Enjoyed it.